called to order the Thursday, September 13th, 2018 meeting of the Royal Oak Zoning Board of Appeals. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. Everything on our agenda this evening is a non-use variance. We have only 6 out of 9 board members, so keep in mind any question that comes before us is going to take 5 out of 6 affirmative votes. And I tell you that so if you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, please inform the chairman immediately after the public hearing. The petitioner shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes, and each participant in the public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. The first thing I'm looking for is the approval of the minutes for the August 9th, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second?
We have a second. Additions, corrections, deletions? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those are yours, Mr. Murphy. We have no older unfinished business. All right. So moving right along, that takes us to item D1 of new business, which is case number F180907. Public hearing on the appeal of Bradley Sharp, petitioner and owner for the following variance to the city's fence ordinance. Waive 2 feet of the maximum allowable height of 6 feet to install an 8-foot site obscuring fence located at 306 Hendrie Boulevard. Mr. Murphy.
This property is located on Hendrie, and it's divided from the commercial properties on Woodward Avenue via the public alley that intersects the two. And the petitioner is looking to replace the existing wood fence along that portion of their property with an 8-foot tall site obscuring wood fence. Under the fence ordinance requirements, a fence on a property line can be no taller than 6 feet. So they need a waiver of 2 feet in order to erect that 8-foot tall wood fence right on the property line.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
Do we know how tall these fences are that are already up?
I don't know the exact height. Perhaps the homeowner will be able to inform us.
Anybody else? All right, not seeing. Oh, I'm
May I
sorry.
ask, Joseph, did it seem clear to you that the 8-foot request was just for the back of the yard as opposed to the sides?
Yes, correct.
All right, thank you.
All right. Is the petitioner present? Yeah, please come forward, introduce yourself, name and address for the record, and tell us about your plan, sir.
Hi, my name is Brad Sharp, and I'm the owner of the property at 306 Hendrie Boulevard in Royal Oak. I currently have an 8-foot fence on the back of my property that borders the alley and the businesses, the back of the businesses on Woodward. And I'm requesting a variance to replace the 8-foot fence with an 8-foot fence. I'm looking for a little bit of a barrier between my property and the businesses. I also have a pool on the property, so I'm hoping to have as substantial as a fence as I can, just to provide safety for access to the property. The fence that I have is 8 foot. My neighbor has an outbuilding on the back of his property, and then there's a 8-foot fence on his property that goes the extent of his property and his neighbor's property. So there's about 120 feet of 8-foot fence, his back building, and then my fence, which is currently 8 feet.
Any questions for the petitioner? Yes, ma'am.
Yours is currently 8 feet because it looks like it's 2 feet shorter than everything else back there.
I have some additional handouts with pictures, if that's helpful.
No, it's fine. Just surprised that it's 8.
I was confused where it began and where it
Yeah.
stopped. I mean, there's certainly 8 foot and then some lower, and then buildings in between, so it's kind of confusing trying to
Right.
pick up the house from the alley.
My fence is the square top
Oh,
fence.
okay. I
So that
see.
is the 8 foot.
Yeah, that looks like 8 feet.
And the fence that I'm putting in is a metal pole fence. The pole is surrounded in wood, so it's a fairly strong fence that'll be helpful around the pool.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to ask you gentlemen to take a seat real quickly, just so I can open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the Zoning Board of Appeals on this matter? All right, not seeing any, I will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, why don't you come back up just in case we have any questions, since nobody give you a little more exercise in.
Almost said no.
Mr. Kroll.
I will make a motion to approve this fence.
Support. We have a motion, we have a second. Any comments that you want to add to that?
Well, you guys know I like action fence, but beyond that, you know, it's a situation where there's an 8-foot fence that doesn't look near as good as the 8-foot fence that's gonna be there. I don't know how that could be a bad thing.
Any other comments?
I'll
With,
just comment that it's on commercial property behind it.
Right, exactly.
And not only commercial property, but right off
Alley.
Woodward.
Woodward
Yeah.
commercial
Which has
property.
a lot of traffic noise, and although a fence won't get rid of it, it will moderate it a little bit.
All right, not seeing any other comments, I will go ahead and,
I would
I'm
ask.
sorry.
I just wanted to be clear, we're just talking about, again, I asked Joseph the same question, the back alley portion, not the sides. Will remain, this, whatever privacy fence is on the side will remain at the 6 foot.
It will.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. All right, I'll go ahead and call for the vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set.
Thank you
By the
very
way, we
much.
forgot to ask him if he wanted us to vote on it tonight.
He didn't need to, he didn't need to use. I'm just joking.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you both. Have a great night. All right, item D2, case number 180928, public hearing on the appeal of Krieger Klatt Architects, petitioner, and St. John's Episcopal Church, owner for the following variance. Waive 19 feet of the minimum required 25-foot south yard setback measured to the existing raised planting beds to permit a community garden within a required front yard setback along Hendrie Blvd at 26998 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
In 2010, the City Commission amended the zoning ordinance to include provisions with regard to domestic and community gardens, 2 different types of gardens. The petitioner went in front of the Planning Commission 2 months ago and received approval in order to establish a community gardens on the south side of their property. And they wanted to place, as you can see in the drawing, a greenhouse, or what's referred to as a hoop house. And they have some existing raised planter beds. They did receive approval from the Planning Commission, but they were instructed to seek a variance in order to retain the existing raised flower beds, which were put in after the ordinance requirements without seeking the approval. So the Planning Commission did approve the site plan as shown in the packet, but they instructed the petitioner to come in front of you today to seek a waiver for the raised beds because they are located within the front yard setback along Hendrie Boulevard.
When were the rays put in, did you say? Or did you?
They can give you an understanding of the exact date. I don't recall the exact date, but it was certainly after the ordinance provisions took effect.
Any other questions?
Does that ordinance only apply to non-residential property?
The two different definitions under the ordinance, so a domestic garden would be a traditional residential garden where you in your backyard would have tomatoes and corn and what have you, and a community garden would apply to things like institutional uses or food establishments, large-scale community gardens like you might see in Detroit. Those are provisions that are intended to be much more intense or larger operations on non-residential properties. So it's to allow for them, but to have regulations that provide some limits.
Anybody else? All right, not seeing anybody. Are the petitioners present?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Reverend Beth Taylor. I'm the head pastor at St. John's Episcopal Church at 11 Mile and Woodward, and I reside at 1017 North Altadena in Royal Oak. We are here to request a variance for the setback requirement for the purpose of preserving 2 existing raised garden beds on our property, which are used exclusively to grow fresh produce for the Open Hands Food Pantry, which is a nonprofit organization that is housed on the property of St. John's. In 1983, a small group of people at St. John's began to address hunger in our neighborhood by operating out of a small closet to pass out a few canned goods once a week. And over the years, that little operation has grown into the largest food pantry in Oakland County. We serve over 14,000 people a year in our nonprofit. We do this quietly, without fanfare, respecting the dignity of the people we serve, respecting our neighbors. Most of the people we serve are families with young children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. We're very good neighbors. We take pride in that. Open Hands is entirely staffed by volunteers. Over 15 congregations, including Kensington and Genesis, as well as large schools, local schools, small and large businesses, and good-hearted neighbors. Hundreds of people volunteer at Open Hands Food Pantry and the Garden because they also believe in being good neighbors. Hunger is real in Oakland County. Hunger is real in Royal Oak, and we do our best to feed people at this small nonprofit. 4 years ago, to answer your question, 4 years ago, we had a vision to supplement the non-perishable foods that you typically see in food pantries, pastas, peanut butter, canned foods, with fresh produce that we grow in 8 raised beds in our open hand garden. We grow lettuce, kale, collards, peppers, tomatoes, and fresh herbs. In the last 2 years, the industrial engineering students from Oakland University made our garden their signature senior project and helped us to design and install a water harvesting system, a solar-powered irrigation system that uses parts and pieces that anyone can get at a hardware store. We teach volunteers gardening techniques, sustainability, water conservation, and we give the neighborhood the opportunity to help others by volunteering in the garden. Tonight we come to you with a request. We would like to ask for a variance to the setback requirements for the land that 2 of our 8 beds sit on. When we built these 8 beds 4 years ago, we did so in goodwill, making it aesthetically pleasing and easy to access. A couple of years later, when we started making inquiries to the city about the possible addition of a hoop house, which would allow us to extend our growing season and would allow us to triple the production of the garden without changing the topography, without using any light source, heat source, sewer source, water source. When we started talking to the city about applying for that or adding the hoop house, we applied for a land, or at that time we accepted the city's designation of Open Hands Garden as being a community garden at that time. And I would just reiterate that we are small and we're a nonprofit, it's not commercial. All the produce is used in the garden. We applied for the land use permit with the Royal Oak Planning Commission. We received a unanimous approval for the hoop house, which we hope to and intend to build soon. In preparation for that hearing, the city staff let us know that as a community garden, we exceed this setback requirement. At the hearing, we were encouraged by members of the commission to apply for a variance to the setback requirement to allow the 2 beds to remain. So here we are. Dennis is going to just briefly tell you about the hardship that we see. Yeah.
You can man the picture. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Dennis Spatafora. I'm chairperson of the Open Hands Garden. My wife and I have been members of St. John's for 15 years, and we live in Pleasant Ridge. Open Hands Garden is nearing the end of its 4th year in the current location, and we've done that without incident or citation. When the garden was installed 4 years ago, we had awareness of setback as it relates to structures and buildings on the property. We were not aware of the garden ordinance that placed a setback requirement on planting beds. With southern exposure, we located the beds to take full advantage of the available sunlight. Wanting to be good neighbors, we made sure that we would always be aesthetically pleasing, and I think the picture clearly shows that. The garden follows organic best practice in that we do not use chemical-based pesticides or soil amendments. Over the 4 years, the planting beds have been cultivated and amended to be high-producing plots for organically grown produce. As Beth mentioned, to further model sustainability, last summer we worked with Oakland University engineers to design, develop, and install a fully automated solar-powered rainwater harvesting and irrigation system. The programming and organization of the system, or optimization of the system, was done with the location of the current planting bed configuration in mind. The 2 beds in question represent 25% of our capacity to produce nutritious food for hungry people in Oakland County. Removing the bed beds directly impacts that capacity and negates multiple hours of volunteer time dedicated to our mission. Given the location of the proposed hoop house, relocating the beds would not be feasible and allow us to honor the setback requirement and continue to take advantage of the irrigation system without several $100s of additional expense and labor. In closing, hopefully I've given you a picture of the hardship that maintaining the current setback places on our ability to fulfill our mission of addressing hunger, and that you will be able to grant the requested variance. Thanks for your consideration.
Ms. Donegan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just one last thing.
Sure.
I just want everybody to know that and my name is Marie Donegan, lifelong member of St. John's Episcopal Church, a good long life. So in anticipation of all of this, we went door to door and talked to all of our neighbors. We held 2 neighbor meetings to get people to come in and talk to us, and we had some people who did come in and talk to us. In fact, they became volunteers, so this is very good. So we built our relationships, we've talked to everybody, and so who knew when we built 8 garden beds that we would be a community garden? But we are, and we're proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before I open up for any questions that the board has, let me just say thank you all, because this is just one aspect of all the things that you do as an organization. The food is one thing, but obviously, those of us who follow you and people like Marie on Facebook, we see what you do day in and day out, so thank you for that. Do we have any questions for the petitioners at this point? All right, seeing none, I'll ask you folks to take a seat real quickly, and I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to address the ZBA on this matter? All right, not seeing anybody, I'll go ahead and I'll close the public hearing. And as I had mentioned earlier, we have 6 board members. You're going to need 5 affirmative votes. We can push this back a month, or we can go ahead and move forward.
We'll go for it.
All right, so Mr. Kroll, you can get the ball rolling.
Based on that, I will make a motion to approve this.
Support.
And we have a second. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, some of these cases that come in front of us, I realize that sometimes we get caught up in between the different codes that are set. I not only support you people, I commend you. What a wonderful thing you're doing. So I hope my fellow commissioners will join us.
But they brought fruit. They brought vegetables.
Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would just comment that, to me, I've seen a lot of people with backyard gardens or side yard gardens that are just like this. And they wouldn't have to meet the setback requirement, and they're attractive. And it's all for use of the group that is housed there. So I don't have any problem with this whatsoever.
Ms. Page?
Directly across the street is a commercial property. I mean, I could see occasionally these kind of things maybe upset a neighbor with a house. The closest house is the other side of their parking lot, which of course doesn't look as good as these gardens. So I just can't see any problem whatsoever with those 2 beds being that close to the sidewalk.
And I actually had a chance to look at them the other day as I was doing something that I'm sure Ms. Donegan would appreciate. I was walking to take the fast bus downtown. And it looks wonderful, so.
You hit both of them.
Exactly.
Gardens and fast bus. I'll just add, I think it's tremendous to have this example on that corner where lots of people pass by and see that people are caring enough about their neighbors to grow food to distribute. So I'm really happy to call for the vote, I hope.
All right, and then I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you again.
Keep up the great work, guys.
I think you kind of had said hello, frankly.
Fresh produce for you to share amongst
Oh,
yourselves.
goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, that takes us along to item number D3, which is case number 180829. Public hearing on the appeal of RT S Building LLC petitioner and owner for the following variances. A, waive 6 of the minimum required 28 off-street parking spaces to permit construction of a 3-story mixed-use building with ground-level retail sales and 8 residential dwelling units on the upper floors along the off-street parking lot along South Center at 924 South Main and 921 South Center. Mr. Murphy.
The petitioner received site plan and special land use approval from the Planning Commission 2 months ago in order to demolish all the structures on the site now. And on the Main Street portion, this property is bisected by the public alley in between, so it has frontage on Main Street as well as Center Street. On the Main Street portion, they're proposing to construct a 3-story building. On the ground floor will be retail sales, and there'll be 4 units on the second floor and 4 residential units on the third floor, so 8 total residential units. There are 11 parking spaces behind the building. Again, that's the portion east of the public alley. West of the public alley is a surface parking lot, and that contains an additional 11 parking spaces. So in total, there are 22 parking spaces associated with the approved site plan. Based on the uses, they're required to have 28 parking spaces. So they're here in front of you today to seek the waiver from that difference.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, ma'am.
So this parking lot off of Center Street is going to be between 2 residences?
Correct, correct.
Anybody else? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Yes, sir.
Good evening, William Webb speaking for the landowner. The property at 924 South Main, to the best of our knowledge, has been a garage repair facility for at least 50 years, maybe longer, or some similar function to that. And the proposed development, I think, would be a significant improvement to the area. The Planning Commission made a new requirement. They wanted a 25-foot setback for landscaping, a beautification landscaping on Center Street, and that's what causes the, I'll call it a shortfall in parking. And that's why we're here asking to waive 6 of the 28 spaces for the parking. Because without the waiver, the problem is then they have to shrink the development down, and it becomes, it's lacking economic feasibility to go forward, is what it really is happening. And I don't imagine you want to keep the garage there. So we're really hopeful that you'll go along with what the Planning Commission is offering, and so we can have the 25-foot decorative buffer there and give us a 6 parking space waiver. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have potential lessees for the retail space?
No, not yet.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any, sir. I'll ask you to take a seat real quickly so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us on this issue? Not seeing any, I will go ahead and close it and bring it back to this side of the table. And we're now to the action phase. We can hold you over for a month if you would like to have more members present while voting, or we can move forward. It's completely up to you, sir.
Let's go forward.
Thank you. Somebody?
I guess I have another question
Yes.
for Joseph. How is the 28 determined? I know there's 16 for the residences. And what did you base the retail usage on?
That's based on the usable floor area.
Mr. Webb?
And they did provide us with a floor plan for that, for those tenant spaces, so we deducted the bathrooms, if it stops jumping around on me. And we came up with a usable floor area and divided that by the required amount of parking for retail, which is 1 parking space for 250 square feet of usable floor area. So based on the amount of usable floor area, it requires 12 parking spaces.
So it could be less than that, though, I mean,
Yeah,
based on the usage.
It could be 1 tenant space, as long as it had the same amount of usable floor area. It could be 3, it could be, obviously it's shown here as 2.
Do you plan on creating dedicated spots for the residents so that those people who come home at whatever time never have to fight for a spot?
I think that would be an ideal situation. Absolutely. Unless you didn't want us to do that.
Well, no, I mean, my thinking would be, if I came home from work at 5:30 and the spot behind my condo was taken, I'd probably be a little miffed, so.
I understand.
Right. right, any other questions for the petitioner?
One more.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
There's a parking lot right across the street from the one you're putting in, I think a surface lot,
When you say
across Center Street. Did
think it
I
belongs to
see
the
that
college,
right?
maybe?
That's part of the college parking?
yes.
Are you referring to the one at the intersection of Lincoln and Center?
No, it seems to be, yeah, I guess it does go all the way
Just
to
a
the
little further
corner.
north.
Yeah,
That's owned by the bank.
the bank.
The bank wasn't required to have the 25-foot buffer. They have, I'm guessing, a 6 or 8-foot buffer, which allowed them more spaces. So
Okay,
this would be more beautiful.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, is anybody prepared to take action?
I would make a motion to approve the variance
We have a
as
motion,
requested.
I'll support it.
and we have a second. Mr. Curtis?
Well, we're talking about downtown density here, amongst other things, and if we're going to have housing in this location, it's gonna have business involved, and it's gonna have competition for parking, and I think we live in a culture that has developed an expectation about density, and this ordinance is limiting this, and, you know, the petitioner says it's the city that has asked them to kind of wipe out some of the parking in order to make the landscape more beautiful, and I think this is a great plan for that location. Much better than that old garage.
Ms. Zukin, did you want anything?
Oh, I think the garage is cute, but, no, I think there's enough parking in the area that it won't create a problem. And this is more spaces than are usually designated for commercial development and for housing along that corridor, so I'm comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable supporting the motion as well. I think the main reason for me, frankly, is, and that's why I asked you about the parking, you know, so that the residents know that they have their parking guaranteed, but at the residential or at the retail level, I mean, if I'm driving down and see a parking spot on the street, I'm not gonna drive around back, I'll just do on-street parking, run in, buy whatever I have to buy and move on. Yes, sir.
I guess I'm gonna do my living across the street routine again, and based on what I'm looking at today and based on what I'm looking at here, sign me up.
Any other comments?
There is parking on Main Street in front of it. I know we can't count that.
There's-
And if I was running into a commercial thing to do some short-term business, I'm sure I'd be trying to park in front of it rather than in back of it anyways. So I don't see a problem. This actually is much closer to having the proper amount of parking spaces than an awful lot of the ones that we deal with on Woodward all the time.
And, you know, the other thing is, a lot of these spaces will be empty during the day as people go to work, so probably the retail, it's kind of our concept throughout Royal Oak, right, nighttime and daytime.
Shared parking
so-
Yeah.
idea, right?
Yeah, so I think this is adequate for sure. I think we over park anyway, personally.
Not seeing any other comments, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
You as well. Okay, moving right along to item D4, which is case number 180931, public hearing on the appeal of Catherine Alfara, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, petitioner owner for the following variances, and there's actually a handful of them, so I'll let you roll through those, Mr. Murphy.
All right. We actually saw a variance request directly across the street last month. Mildly similar in
That
nature.
looked familiar.
Are they doing like all four corners of this, or do you know?
We'll bring them all
I
at
had to
once.
look back at it. What address am I looking?
The site currently contains a house with a detached garage. The petitioner is proposing to demolish the existing garage and in that same approximate location do an addition to the rear of the house. The house has a non-conforming side yard setback along Washington Avenue. It needs to be, the setback needs to be equivalent to the house to the north, which fronts Washington Avenue. And obviously that house has a very large front yard setback. So the petitioner is proposing to expand that non-conforming structure in a way that's non-conforming. They're keeping it in line the addition in line along the east property line. And they're also looking to construct a new detached garage that'll be sited further north on the property. And obviously, that garage is also within the front yard setback of the house to the north, so they're seeking a waiver in order to accomplish that as well.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy?
And I think I heard you say it would not expand the, how do we talk about it, the non-conforming nature. They're not moving it closer to Washington, it's on that same line.
Correct.
The garage is included in that statement, right?
Yeah, and an easy way to, if I can show it to you, this is the vantage point from the property to the north, along the public sidewalk. If you see the brick edge of the home, correct, it's coming further out, it's not coming any closer to the sidewalk.
That's my question, yep.
Any other questions? All right, is the petitioner present? Good evening.
I'm Dennis Berry, out in Waterford, Michigan, and I'm the one that drew the plans. I'm the designer.
Okay.
This is the owner, Dennis and Kathy.
Hi.
And, yeah, they want to add an addition to the home, like we were saying. Corner lot, so we're really kind of restricted there, so our hardship is Washington Street. So like you said, we kept the addition on the same setback, so we don't encroach any farther than we already have. We also wanted to keep the lot coverage under the maximum lot coverage. Kept our side yards on the detached garage at a minimum. Trying to maximize the space, they want to add a master suite onto the second floor and a family room off the lower level. So that's how we did it. We just kind of worked with what we could, and we don't really have anywhere to go on Washington Street. We're kind of tight, so.
Any questions for the petitioner? Anything you two folks want to add to this, or? The floor is yours. So, that being the case, I will go ahead and ask you folks to take a seat real quickly just so I can open up the public hearing. Don't go too far. I'm sure we'll be calling you right back up. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the ZBA on this matter? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table.
And then the option to defer.
Also, yes, thank you for again, we're down 3 members. You would need 5 out of 6 affirmative votes. We can move forward, or we can carry it over to next month. Completely your choice.
Yeah, we'll move forward.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right. Is anybody prepared to say something or take action?
I'll say something. I'm going to take a Alan Kroll position for once and say that if I lived across the street, I'd be happy that this change is being made, because angling the garage, bringing the open porch out, I think makes it look a lot more inviting than what's there now. I'm not thrilled with them expanding the size of the nonconformity, but it's a large lot and they're not exceeding the coverage, so.
Do you want to offer that as a motion?
I'll move to to adopt the variance request.
Yeah,
All 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll support that.
And we have a second. Anything you want to follow up, Ms. Zukin or Mr. Kroll?
No, I kind of agree. It's, I think Washington is kind of a hardship, I think for the same reason we approved last month's, and I really kind of said, wait a minute, this is like deja vu. But, you know, certainly it's going to, both those corners are going to look a lot better, so, and the hardship is Washington. You know, we've voted on, I mean, we've voted on things up and down Washington, from downtown, all the, you know, seem to have too close to the street, too far from the street, there's always something going on in Washington, so it's unique.
Okay. Any other comments?
Looking at this aerial photo, the entire lot is in the setback, it seems to me. I mean, you can't do it, I mean, yeah, I'll be supporting this one.
You know, there's something kind of, I don't know if it's fundamentally wrong with the overall approach to the house sitting next to you. And I realize we can't have houses all over the place, but I think it is a bit of a hardship when somebody can't do something to their house based on houses on both sides of them. So I think you know, I don't want to see every house at a different level either, so I don't know what the perfect answer to it is, but,
Well, this lot's deep enough that.
yeah,
I don't
thanks, so
it's a
I think it
problem.
fits well.
Then I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set. Thank you so much.
A strange night.
Seem to be more effective when there's less people.
All right, moving right along to our last case of the evening. That's case number D5, or excuse me, item D5, case number 180932, public hearing on the appeal of Judy and Jack McRobb, petitioner and owner for the following variances. A, waive 2 feet of the minimum required 3-foot west side yard setback. B, waive 1 of the maximum allowable 2 accessory structures. C, waive 0.06% of the maximum allowable total lot coverage of 30% for all structures to permit construction of a 3-foot by 32-foot accessory structure shed located at 3314 Normandy. Mr. Murphy.
In early July, the code enforcement officer conducted a site visit at this location based on a complaint that they had received, and they discovered that a larger size shed was being constructed in very close proximity to the property line. And so based on communication with the property owner, they've informed us that they're constructing a 3-foot wide by 32-foot long shed that's essentially a foot from the property line. As you can see from the photographs in the report, and I think the photograph that they provided for us in the report is a very good vantage point for you to view that. The ordinance states that any accessory structure under 13 feet in height, which this is certainly the case, that it be no closer than 3 feet to the property line. And again, they've indicated that it would be approximately a foot, so they're seeking a waiver from that minimum side yard setback of 3 feet. The ordinance does define different types of accessory structures as different types of buildings, such as attached garages, detached garages, sheds, carports, gazebos, any of that smorgasbord. And it also goes further to say that you can have no more than 2 accessory structures. The petitioner does have an attached garage, and they've indicated that they will be, in addition to constructing this particular one that you see in front of you, they'll also be retaining one of the other ones on the property. So therefore, there'll be a total of 3 accessory structures. The ordinance allows for 2. So they're seeking a waiver. Additionally, the ordinance states that the total lot coverage may be no more than 30%, and that's all structures with a roof line, be they a house, a covered porch, sheds, anything, any of those types of structures. They cannot be more than 30% of the lot, and in this case, the addition of this structure pushes the total lot coverage over to 30.6%, or 45 square feet. So they're seeking a waiver from that as well.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Not seeing any. Is the petitioner present?
Good evening, Jack and Judy McRobb at 3314 Normandy in Royal Oak, Michigan. We've been living at the house for 23 years, and my husband and I have fostered 26 children there. And our backyard is our safe haven for our children since we live on a very busy street. We're in the process of consolidating our stuff for the children and wanted to build a more permanent structure instead of our Rubbermaid sheds that were along the fence before. So we started building the fence, and then the neighbor made a complaint, so we're here asking for these variances.
Very good. Any questions for the petitioners at this point? Not seeing any. I'm going to ask you folks just to take a seat real quickly so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I am the neighbor immediately east of the homeowners. I'm at 3320 Normandy.
And your name is?
Laura Justice.
Thank you.
I've currently been in the home for nearly 4 years and been pretty quiet. I do oppose the structures. It is the same height as my garage, and recently I tried to paint my garage and it was very difficult with that higher structure next to it. And cleaning my gutters and maintaining the garage will be difficult. I would like to note that the homeowners are stating the new structure will be a foot away from the current fence, it is currently on the fence and creating a whippling effect to the fence, which does not look good from my vantage point. I am concerned about resale value as well. I do intend to upgrade my home in the future. The other point I would like to address is the 30% coverage for the total structures. Currently, the homeowners have a dog, which is not friendly, and the dog does not maintain residence in the backyard. The dog is currently tied up in the front yard for long portions of the day, and it barks a lot. I do have concern that these structures will even lessen the area for the dog and create a nuisance for myself and the other neighbors around. I think that concludes what I would like to bring to the table.
Thank you so much. Would you like to speak also, ma'am?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lisa Carnegie. I'm at 4216 Mankato, which basically is kind of like on the side, and it's unsightly. Not only that, but behind me is a $500,000 house, beautiful. And their view out their patio to the left is the backyard, which is their sheds.
Nice.
I mean, I don't know how many sheds you can have, but it's just unsightly.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will go ahead and bring it back to this side of the table. And again, we are down 3 members, so we can hold this over till next month, or we can move forward with the matter. It's up to you.
Oh, we can go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah, can I say something to it?
of course.
Yes, I would like to say, first of all, our dog is not tied up in our front yard for long periods of time. We have a run in the front. She has a dog door that she can come and go as she pleases from our backyard, and she goes out all day long. When they allow their dogs to come out on our fence line, the dogs bark crazy, and the neighbor Lisa is the one who.
Hold on, everybody. The decision we make, I promise you, is not going to be based on dogs. Let's stick
Right.
with the
Right, but
zoning
and I'm
matters that we're
saying
dealing with.
addressing her gutters, she's only been in her gutters one time in 4 years, and addressing the painting, she just started, and she painted the front only of her garage. And I sent pictures, I have pictures of the side of what we have to look at, so.
We don't need to see those.
Okay.
We're dealing with a simple 3 variances, and I
Right.
see there's a little
Yeah, there's
hostility
not
between the
gonna be-
neighbors, but that's really,
Can I say one thing? One of the photographs that you had there, looking down the fence line from her property, you can see a fence pole there. I don't know if you have the picture available.
I'm sure Mr. Murphy can find it.
Yeah, our property line is 12 inches on the other side. The fence people put the fence on the inside 12 inches.
Yeah.
So we do have 12 inches that is on her property.
The fence is
Yep.
actually on our property by more than a foot.
Right. That's why we're only asking for the 2 feet, because we have another foot over there.
When we initially put up the fence, the original fence there, the guy that lived there had a dog, and as opposed to tearing down the fence, we put a fence up on our property about a foot inside.
Any questions for the petitioners at this point? Yes, ma'am.
How many sheds are on the property right now? I see like 2 permanent sheds already and then like 3 like Rubbermaid or.
Those Rubbermaid ones, the reason we're building the shed is to get rid of those Rubbermaid things.
Yeah.
How many permanent sheds are there?
There's 1 permanent shed in the back, and then there's a greenhouse on the other side, but it's not permanent.
Like the.
That can be removed, yes. And the other shed that was on the side of the house by the air conditioner, that has been removed. So there's only 1 other one in the backyard, and our garage is attached to the front of our house in our front yard.
And how tall is the structure that you're proposing to?
They sent the diagrams to you. Do you have
7
this?
feet.
7 feet? So it's a 7 feet structure.
7 feet,
How
yeah.
long is it? 7 feet high, and how long is it?
32 feet long,
Okay, and how wide is it?
3 feet,
So it's 3 feet wide, 7 feet tall,
yes.
and 32 feet long?
Yeah, it just goes over the top of the fence, our existing fence, and it covers the eyesore of the neighbors.
So and I see, so from
Garage.
the end of it, so is it like kind of like coming from the end of the fence? How much of the fence is not included in that? Does that make sense?
There's quite a
the question?
bit. There's, from our side lot, where the other shed was, all the way up to the new shed.
Seems like it takes up like half of the backyard, right?
No, it's not half. It's probably, it's not half.
that, I don't know where this sketch came from, but that's not really what it is. We've got about, and keep in mind, these are guesstimations, from the building to the edge of the shed, from the house to the edge of the shed, I think there's probably maybe 10, 12 feet there. Then we've probably got another, well, he's got 13 feet behind, so that may be about right.
Any other questions? Is anybody prepared to take action? Mr. Kroll?
I will make a motion to deny this variance.
All three?
Yes.
We have a motion. And we have a second. Mr. Kroll?
I'm going back to living across the street, and quite honestly, I would not be happy if I were these ladies. I don't know what this is. I couldn't really see it from the street, and I couldn't get an angle of it from anywhere else. So really, this photograph is the only thing I have to go on, but I can't accept this.
I don't see it any different than a fence there, you know? It's a tall structure that's blocking the view, and it goes above and beyond the fence, and it kind of takes over the whole backyard, so I'm opposing it.
I'll be supporting this motion to deny as well, but for the simple reason, there was some changes made to the accessory dwelling ordinance by the Plan Commission, I want to say roughly 10 years ago, maybe it could be a little less recently than that. But there was a lot of talk back and forth about the amount of accessory structures for quite some time. One was the number, and there was people that wanted to be able to build a second accessory structure so they could have a garage and a shed, what have you, for the lawnmower. But it was very clear that 2 was going to be that number, and that was reached on through a lot of debate. And now with this one, they're asking for an additional one above and beyond that. And so frankly, based on what the Planning Commission did and to respect, frankly, the continuity of that decision, I will not be supporting this. Or, I will be supporting the motion to deny, I apologize.
Just to clarify in my mind, the attached garage counts as an accessory structure, correct? Okay, so that and the one shed towards the back of the property that looks like it's fairly substantial are your 2. Okay.
Yeah, for me, even if they removed if they only had the garage and this proposed structure, I would still not approve that. It's not a hardship other than it's been created by the homeowner. There's no uniqueness to the situation. They just decided to do something that's outside of the ordinance, and I can't support it.
Can I say something?
We're on this side of the table, man. Anybody else?
I agree with what everybody said. To me, if it was a fence, as Amanda said, there's no way I would approve it. And it is almost the same as a fence because it's right up to the fence line.
Right, well, before I call for the vote, I will.
Yes,
Please.
the builder talked to the building department, and they said if they could follow the fire codes, that they could allow that building to go up with your approval. So the years, we don't really see any other reason not to have that, and it is kind of a hardship because we're trying to consolidate the stuff for all the children that we take care of by consolidating it into one instead of multiple ones that take up space.
That is not a hardship we can deal with, man. We have 4 criteria. You don't come close to meeting any of them.
With that being said, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to deny all 3 variances signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so Mr. Murphy, that takes us down to E, other business. I see we have a letter in front of us.
Yes, you do have a correspondence in front of you with regard to a case that was granted, tomorrow will be a year ago, and they're requesting an extension to that. They have obtained a building permit. That's one of the initial steps. The next step is to actually go out and start work, and they're asking for time in order to be able to defer that for a little bit longer. And so they've given you a written request, and I think the petitioner is here to have a conversation with you if you so entertain to do so.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Murphy before I call on Mr. Cowan?
So I'm new enough to not know. The extensions happen, right? The letter in front of me suggests they often happen for up to a year. Is that kind of
Yeah,
when
we
they
had one
happen?
last month. Yeah, we had one last month,
yeah.
and the petitioner said that they were getting close to doing their drawings and sending them out to bid, and they didn't want to have that variance go belly up on them, so they asked that you grant an extension, and last month you did.
Yeah.
It was a 90-day one, if I recall.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Cowan?
Good evening, Dennis Cowan of 38505 Woodward and Bloomfield Hills, and also a Royal Oak resident, here representing 303 Kenilworth LLC. First of all, I think it's wonderful that you're going to be out of here before 8 o'clock, I hope. I hope this is a brief,
We're definitely gonna be out of here
discussion.
before 8 o'clock.
And actually, I ran into somebody coming in who had a variance approved, and they said you were in a good mood. So yeah, so that's good. So, but look, we have a practical issue, and that is that
Excuse me, thank you very much.
due to the circumstances, and I laid some of them out, we just came to a point where we'd actually hoped to be here this evening. I had sent we haven't been sitting on our hands. I want you to know that. That isn't the point here. We actually sent a letter. I didn't have time to put it in this letter to the city, and I know the assistant city attorney and Mr. Murphy and others were involved. We'd hoped to be here before you on a legal grounds on a motion for reconsideration, but that didn't work out, and that's okay. And we understand, we were very grateful for, we had the dimensional variances approved last month. We were one short on the use, so now we have to move forward, and so we just need more time, and that's just the situation.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Cowan? I mean, from my perspective, the one thing that sort of rings in my head, reading this letter earlier and then reading it again now, I think we had 2 or 3 different instances where we couldn't field an entire, Mr. Cowan, where we couldn't field an entire board. You kept getting pushed back, and here we are today. And
It'd be 3 months, wasn't it?
I think it was actually 60 days when you added up. But I think, look, and I understand that, and, we had to, wait for a full board, and that's understandable. That did cause a little bit of a delay here, so we're just trying to, we want to be right, and there's going to be a substantial investment here, so we don't want to get caught. I did talk to Mr. Murphy. The department doesn't have the ability to waive, and I think you should know that's a good thing, that they just can't unilaterally make deals with people, and he said, well, what you should do is come before the board for an extension, so that's why we're here. And we're throwing ourselves at your mercy.
Do you feel confident this is the only extension you're going to need?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You asking for 8 months or a year?
Just 8 months.
You're confident you can get it done in 8 months and not have to come back for us?
Yes.
I would make a motion to grant this.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Kroll, second by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion?
I'm almost thinking we should make it a year. So, I mean, he's asking for 8 months, but.
If he's confident in that.
That's what he's asking for, yeah.
All right. Well, then I'll stick with 8 months.
Any other discussion? All right, then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? You have 8 months, sir.
Congratulations, because I know you've been here on some long nights, so I'm happy for you.
Well, I did good tonight.
I would open up the public comment, but there is not a living soul in the audience.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Nobody wants to adjourn?
All right. Because I hope you brought blankets and pillows.
Yeah,
for a second.
Gonna need more coffee.
Exactly. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.